As a newsletter publisher, I can offer you some of the insights that will help you get better copywriting and content development contracts with publishers. So basically, I'm going to give you some insider scoop. I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips, and this is a valuable service that you can offer companies that use content for marketing, publishers that write a lot of content or maybe have editorial teams, businesses that want to use white papers and content to promote their products or services, or pretty much anybody who would hire a copywriter. And it is focusing on periodic content. So if your client doesn't already write an article a month or a series of newsletters or have a prospect newsletter, then you want to first get them understanding the value of continual regular content other than you getting paid, but ultimately how they can help educate their customers. Now remember, there are 3 types of content when it comes to content marketing. I discussed this in great detail in my content marketing program, but you have first content for the newbie, somebody who doesn't know they got a problem, somebody who doesn't know that this product or service will be beneficial to them. You have content for the seeker, the individual who is seeking out a solution and needs to make a decision to purchase. And then you have content for retention, content that is designed to keep that customer engaged in a product or service. And so these 3 types of content, if you're producing one of these articles or one of these pieces of content each month or in each category, could be 3 pieces of content. The biggest challenge that a lot of businesses have is they don't know what they should be writing about. And so that's where the service comes that you can offer your clients. And so this particular service is called a forecasting editorial calendar. So an editorial calendar is the content they decided to produce, and kind of like what's going to get published in January, what's going to get published in February, what's going to get published in March, and you can help with that. That's a product you can offer or a service you can offer. But this goes a little bit further because it looks at the historical calendars for the organization. And so a nonprofit that has fundraising newsletters that go out, you can look at the historical fundraising newsletters, but it goes a step further. It looks at the highest converting content and the highest value content when it comes to the goal or objective. So if it's a nonprofit and they've got a monthly newsletter that goes out to generate fundraising, so to generate contributions, and then they've got individual letters that generate contributions, you're going to sit down and look at all that content. You're going to research the target contributor to understand what their needs and desires are and think about topics. You're going to research the organization itself about success stories and its mission, and then you're going to produce this forecasting editorial calendar, which is basically a library of ideas to help the organization write content in the future. And so you might have some content that's seasonal, and you'll identify that. You may have some content that just basically they can pick from a list. And so you're essentially telegraphing the context and interest of both search engines and prospects. A lot of this content will go online. If you haven't figured it out already, by the way, you're basically helping to make a list for the customer of content that's highly likely to be valuable, which they can then hire you to write. So they paid you to brainstorm and research and gather evidence about what content they should be writing, and then they have a list of stuff they can hire you to actually write. Now, again, the format depends. Are these going to be articles? Are these going to be special reports? Are these going to be white papers? Are these going to be fundraising letters? That's a whole different consultation that you can offer. But the concept of a deliverable, which is called a forecasting editorial calendar, is a big giant report that you can give them that helps guide their path to create content that converts. Okay, because a lot of times, and I've even been guilty of this sometimes, I'll just sit down and come up with 5 ideas. But how do I know these 5 ideas are what my readers want? Well, I've developed a system where I ask questions, and then all these questions come in, and then, or I offer to answer questions, and then the questions come in, and then I primarily write content based on the questions. But I can look at the last 15 years or 5 years of questions and look for themes, and then research the audience I want to reach, and then as I've developed these themes, I end up with what we're going to share at the end of this program, which is kind of the big idea for the content. But again, this is very important because when you're forecasting the potential content they can produce, you're directing resources primarily to your organization who can write the content for them, but ultimately around a central editorial guideline, around a central theme or objective. You're really organizing the content, kind of working as like an editorial manager, but it's a great service for customers. So you're going to tease future topics. So you have this giant list, and now when you're writing a current materials, you can tease future topics. So it's very beneficial in that way of helping make current materials, the things that they've committed to in their editorial calendar, more impactful for the long-term relationship with that reader. You can demonstrate a backlog. So a lot of newsletters, if your client is a newsletter publisher, having this future forecasting list of topics gives you the ability to say, here's what we're going to talk about this year. And then here's all the topics that we want to talk about in the future. And by the way, if you see a topic that you need us to talk about now, just write in. So you can generate a lead. The publisher can generate a lead and then ultimately move up topics based on kind of the vote of the reader. And now the readers are more engaged and they're more likely to come visit the content. You can also use these topics to deep link into the context. So maybe last year you wrote a feature-length article, 5,000 words, and from there's a little side topics or tangential topics that you think the audience might be interested in. You can actually bullet point, use the forecasted topic as a bullet point in a new short-form article, which links back to the larger article. And then if you find there's a lot of pickup between there, then you can write the bullet point into an article in the future. Okay, this is very important to understand. So I'm speaking to you from a publisher's perspective who has to produce content every month, every week, and they have to produce content that the readers keep coming back for. You can assist in that with the audience matching, the audience segmentation, the analytics side, the research in the topic area, the generation of ideas, and then, of course, putting those into a document that gives an organization years worth of topics to cover and a structure for capturing new ideas rather than what tends to happen for most publishers is they willy-nilly chase ideas and whatever. What they end up doing is copying whatever the big ideas are in the industry. So if CNN is talking about election fraud, they're going to try to figure out some way to put election fraud in their articles, and it tends to drive them away from the core mission of the organization. So I've done this forecasting for nonprofits, for example, read through their case studies, read through their past materials, looked at some of their analytics, and came up with topics that were on mission and drove the financial contributions. And then they just make sure they pick one of those every so often. So we're not stopping them from writing about current news or tying in current news, but what are the topics that are going to keep bringing people back? What are the contents that performed well in the past? What is the content that has context so that when a search engine sees the site, they are connecting? Now, demonstrating backlog has value if that client is selling advertising. So a lot of times, and if you've bought ads for clients, you're going to see they usually have like an editorial calendar or they have some kind of media kit and it talks about what topics they cover. Well, you can list out a lot of these topics in the media kit as ideas of content that's going to be covered in the future to show that there's a schedule beyond this year's content. You can also use it to test ideas and concepts. So if through research you've identified a handful of topics they should be covering in the future, you can actually also help them develop quizzes, surveys, and tests in order to see which content they should move with in the present. So what's an example of that? Well, you identify, and I'm going to give you an example from my Inside Strategic Relations newsletter. And so I have on my forecasting editorial calendar here the topic of how to be right when everybody else is wrong. Building your immunity to mass delusion and psychosis. Free your mind from deep state programming. Treat yourself correct, or think for yourself correctly. Okay, so that's what we call the big idea blurb. Okay, I could write a giant special report on how to think right when everybody else is thinking wrong. Okay, that's the key theme. People want to believe that they're thinking the right way, and when they see crazy stuff going on around them, they want to assure themselves that they're not crazy, that they're doing things right. And so I introduced the concept of mass delusion and psychosis because we want to be able to say, look, there are times when people are doing what's called groupthink, and you have to be immune to that in order to continue to speak freely. And then there's a little controversial element there when we talk about deep state programming. But again, that paragraph right there is telegraphing key ideas and concepts that audience cares about. So when it comes time to write content, do you think I could get a few little articles out of that? I certainly can. It's so easy. So what you're going to do for the client is you're going to help build out these different topics. And I'll read a few more here just to help you get a concept of what these big ideas are. But that could be an entire marketing campaign. So let's say we were offering a course on how to use critical thinking to make better decisions. Well, I can feed that course with articles that talk about how there's deep state programming, how governments create propaganda to influence the mind of their citizens. And here's an example from China. Here's an example from Soviet Russia. Here's an example from whatever. And now I've got the reason why established that they need a program on how to use critical thinking to make better decisions. Okay, so some of the content you're going to forecast for your client is built on their products and services. Heifer International sends out these little booklets that describe the success stories they've had with people who have received cows or chickens or whatever and have gone through the whole process of Heifer International. So instead of telling us that Heifer offers livestock training, livestock, and then breeding programs, they give us a representational story of someone's success going through those cycles. So a big idea content would be, why is it that the education, the acquisition, the breeding, and the passing along is a high value and beneficial approach to solving for hunger? Okay, so that topic goes out. It's kind of evergreen. It's a big idea. And then they can pull that off the shelf and write 2 or 3 pieces of content about it. They can find a success story. They can build on multiple stories and then ultimately do a fundraiser. So do you see how this works? It reduces the amount of effort it takes to get started with an idea while concentrating the majority of effort on writing the content that will be pre-screened for that audience, and then ultimately helps you publish more. One of my biggest problems as a publisher is I've got a lot of content that could be reused. I just don't have the framework for reusing it. And again, that's why we do this forecasting editorial calendar. Let me give you another idea here. Free yourself from a cubicle, work remote, or in a corner office with dignity. The power of personal freedom. Make your commute more productive. Low carbon footprint. Improve your health. Okay, so that's a blurb for my Inside Strategic Relations newsletter that helps high-income professionals, knowledge workers, and other folks gain more independence in life. So again, I could make a product out of that. I could test the concept to see if people really want to work remote. I can do a lot of things with that paragraph there, far beyond the what do we need to come up with this week. So the biggest challenge that a publisher has, the biggest challenge that an editorial manager has that's in a fundraising position, the biggest challenge that a news publication has is, what's the story that's going to connect with our reader so that the reader keeps coming back. Now, again, as a copywriter, as a marketer, you're perfectly suited to do so. And if you're working with newsletters, like paid newsletters, political newsletters, business or finance newsletters, these topics help create even special reports or premiums. But again, producing them in advance from audience research, from going over the analytics and going over the back end of the business itself helps you create topics that are more useful. So here's another one. What is fantasy thinking, and how to stop it? And I put number 1, digest outcomes into achievable steps. Number 2, internal locus of control. Number 3, keep on trying and measuring. Number 4, practice a success routine. Number 5, daily progress. So the big idea is, what is fantastical thinking, or what is fantasy thinking? And by the way, fantasy thinking is like what motivates people to buy lottery tickets. If I just get this one ticket and I get the right numbers, I'm going to be a millionaire. Fantasy thinking is when you're in a difficult situation, you think that somebody's going to come along and save you. And so in the context of critical thinking, fantasy thinking actually distracts you from practical solutions. So this article itself has to deliver practical solutions, because we want someone to be able to see what they can do versus what might happen. So you see that thinking behind there? When you sit down with a client and you have this report, the next step is to start talking about these concepts. And then you can ask them the question, which of these concepts should we start on today? Do you see where that goes? So you're basically using their analytics, you're using their past performance, you're using their customer avatars, and if they don't have a customer avatar, you help them write one. You're building out a package where you're going to deliver to them big ideas. Because remember, it's the big idea that keeps somebody coming back. I could write a complete newsletter on, so I'll give you one more. What top producers know that you do not. How world builders shape the success they achieve while others struggle. And then the secret, I put in quotes, is they organize people and resources around their leadership. That excerpt there, I actually have a report called What Top Producers Know That You Do Not. And it's about the investment that top producers make in their own abilities, in their own health, and their own performance, so that they can organize people and resources around their leadership. That paragraph right there, if I was to sit across from a client and they say, you know what, that paragraph really resonates with me, we need to be writing about that, I can say, okay, are we going to write a special report? Are we going to write lead generation pieces and then an email series after that? Are we going to use it for our next subscription drive by creating a premium? What works best for you? And they're going to say, it's almost like a choose your own adventure for the client. And they're going to say, okay, great. What do we got about top performance? Looks like we got a bunch of articles in the past. Let's compile those articles to make a subscription premium. And then we're going to do a campaign to get more subscribers. See, we're outcome oriented as marketers. We're going to, as copywriters, we can take that hook, or we can take that big idea and turn it into something. And altogether, the client gets kind of a Bible, kind of a way to see into the future. Now, what do we have to express about these things? So I have a process for doing this. We can ask about the process, and I'll get you information about that. Especially if you're a member, we talk about strategies to help you grow your copywriting or marketing agency. But what you have to make sure the customer understands is that once you produce this for the customer, that this is confidential information. Okay, that this list of big ideas, hooks, and content that is appealing to their customer base is now top secret information. And if they're the vice president of sales, if they're the editorial director, that they're going to keep this close at heart and they're going to share it with the executives, but they're not going to willy-nilly give this out to contractors. They will never give this full list to anybody for any reason, and the list is more about picking off these topics and driving them. Now, again, we might pick off the topics and put it in our media kit, but we're only going to put 3 or 4 of the topics in the media kit. It is better to use these as lead generation so that if we ever reveal these topics or these big ideas, we're revealing them in a way that generates leads or generates sales. And we explain this to the client because this list, in the hands of competition, circumvents the value of what you're doing for them. Now, understand this. If the competition to this publication has a list of all the topics that are ideally suited for their target audience, based on success stories, built on psychological connection to that buyer, then all they got to do is start writing. Because let me give you a topic from my Sustainable Wealth Secrets newsletter. Beat inflation not by participating. Set up parallel structures for food, clothing, and shelter. Focus spending on local business. Stay healthy and buy used. Okay, that's part of my intentional thrift program. So you've got inflation, and we're just not going to participate with inflation. That feeds the independence and desire of the end user. Do you see how this comes out? You will now become the smartest person in their organization when it comes to this target market. You've provided them cliff notes to what this target market wants. The higher they revere the value of this report that you're creating for them, because you're giving them a physical deliverable, which is more meaningful. They're more likely to pay the rest of their bill if they got it. By the way, you're going to get money up front when you do something like this, because it does take a little bit of work on your part. But ultimately, it will be a cherished possession. They only need to do it once a year. So if someone else comes along and says, hey, we're going to do a content audit for you, and we're going to help you come up with new ideas and concepts that you could write about in the future, they're going to say no. So because you're first in, you're now the authority, and you've demonstrated authority. You're now the authority to write additional content for them. And so you can use this to lock out your competition. Now, when you sell this particular package, and it is a package, again, you want to emphasize that, yes, you've got an editorial calendar right now. It's very useful and beneficial for your current year. But are you running ask campaigns, doing surveys, and trying to understand what your visitors want as far as content in the future? Search engines will reward you on repeat visitors, and repeat visitors gives you a better chance and opportunity to get subscribers, to gain contributions, to gain customers. And so what we're offering you here is a forecasting editorial calendar that's built on your customer avatar, their needs, desires, and wants, built on what we understand about who performs or actually buys your products and services, and then ultimately gives you a roadmap to produce solid, customer attracting and converting content. This content focuses on the big ideas, the hooks, and the concepts that keep your buyers engaged. And when we go through such an exercise, you'll discover new things about your customers that you never knew before. In fact, we're going to produce a document for you that is so valuable that you will not want anybody to see it other than your senior level executives, other than your core content team, because this list in the hands of a competitor is an industry building tool. In fact, they can build your business on the 20, 30, 40, or even 100 new ideas that we're able to bring up for you. Now, I do understand that ideas are a dime a dozen, so we have a special technique that we use not only to research your customers and clients, but we also research your former interactions. We want to know from your analytics what works and what doesn't, and then we expand on those topics in a psychological and demographically relevant way in order to connect with, to hook the interest, and bring buyers to your business. Now, when your editorial team sits down and puts out next year's editorial calendar, you're going to know that you're going to have hit after hit. You're going to be able to create easily new newsletter subscription premiums, new products and services, even write books if you're in the experts business. More importantly is that this kind of thing is something you do once a year, once every couple of years, because it is such a gold mine in guiding and directing your business. No longer will you have to last minute worry about whether or not you're going to have this topic or that topic. You can simply pick from a list those ideas and concepts that are valuable and of interest and engaging to your readers. More importantly is that you can start teasing on these topics, whether you're doing lead generation, ask campaigns, surveys, and start fully understanding how these topics motivate the behavior of your visitors. Now, as one simple way to get started, you simply contact me and then of course you provide your contact information, and we'll help you get started. The key to this particular forecasting editorial calendar, and now see, I've shifted it from the pitch to what's important for you to understand. The key to this is that you're likely already building these types of things when you come in and do a pitch meeting. So you're already probably coming up with 5 ideas and saying, well, here's, which one of these would you like me to write about? But framing it as a service that you're delivering helps that client get something that's way more useful. So in just what I have in front of me here on my Inside Strategic Relations Forecasting Editorial Calendar, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 hooks built on this methodology, which I can teach you, built on what I know motivates and modifies behavior of the viewer or the listener. And when it comes time to create a podcast, when it comes time to produce an article, when it comes time to produce a special report or some kind of product, I simply grab something off the list, expand on it like I demonstrated to you here today, and the exercise that you'll go through to produce this for a client will give you that ability in that target market, in that particular client, to just riff off the topic and create an outline. So you're going to write faster too. But it is a powerful thing. I wouldn't trade it for any other skill. In fact, when you start doing this for clients, your price point is going to be $8,000, maybe $20,000, depending on the volume the business has. And it is something that if they don't want to go with this, you can downsell into the ask campaigns and other things. So I'll leave you with one last point. If when you make this pitch, they say, look, I don't do surveys, I don't have a prospect newsletter, I don't have periodic content, you can look them right in the eyes and say, oh, no wonder we're talking today, because you're missing some of the key factors that are necessary to have such a streamlined and organized set of content that modifies behavior, that generates leads, that produces sales. Let's get started with the customer avatar. Because legitimately, a lot of your clients may not have customer avatars. They may not know which segments buy. And they're going to be honest with you. When you show them something like this, they're going to be honest with you, and they're going to say, we don't even do an editorial calendar for a year. We literally come up with, out of our ass, we come up with content at the last minute, and we hope it works. We're throwing spaghetti against the wall. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm so glad we were able to get together today, because concepts like this will help you produce your editorial calendar. And then not only will you be producing content on a regular basis, not only will you be producing content that is valuable to your users, but we can start doing things like lead generation testing. We can start doing conversion testing, and we can start understanding what motivates your prospects to purchase. That's how you get more sales. That's how you build the funds that are necessary to invest in this kind of future view. But if we want to just stop the bleeding, we need an editorial calendar. Folks, I don't know if you understand how powerful this is, and I don't like to give this stuff away for free, but I thought I'd give you a big treat because you're a loyal listener to the podcast. But ultimately, if you have questions about this or anything else I've covered, I do have on this paper here that I got put together for my team. I do have a 10-step process. It goes all the way to monitoring the analytics so that you can prove to the customer that these hooks and ideas were valuable. This is about creating long-term relationships. This is about producing streams of income for your agency. And if there's anything about this that you don't understand 100% and you can implement from our time together today, then visit me at www.adbriefing.co.uk. Go to the contact page and contact me. I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips, helping you have a business of copywriting, okay? You don't have to write really good copy in order to do the research that is going to happen anyway to write really good copy. And so stop chasing clients with these $99 press releases, with a $100 sales letter, and start producing transformational services for them, and of course high ticket services for you, and the results that both you and your client are looking for. Thanks for being a part of what we do here. Thank you for your feedback and comments. I'd love also to hear your success stories, and more importantly, your questions, because questions are the pathway to results, and I want you to get results. Again, I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips, and I'll see you in the next podcast.